Welcome to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy, as I say in every episode. Big welcome to everybody who's tuned in for the first time. Just to give you a bit of a crash course very quickly of what the podcast is all about. It is about conversation, it's about stories, it's about learning about what people are up to, what their passions are, what their interests are, what type of industry they work in, their job, whether it be things that are creative, anything and everything. It's also about experiences. It's about learning about things that people have been through in the past. It's about getting different perspectives and things that people have learned from experiences that they've had in the past. Blah, 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 blah. It's a whole range of different things, and it's as vague and as specific as that. But I think the big thing that I have seen in the past to date is that a lot of people are getting great takeaways from it, whether it be it triggers a thought or an idea, some inspiration or motivation to do something that they've been wanting to do for a while, or it's some reassurance that some people have a similar outlook to what they have. And I've certainly had a range of feedback that's similar to that over the past several months of doing this podcast. So it's been really cool. So that's what it's all about. So it does mean that my guests are varied and there's all sorts of different things on each and every episode and different topics. And that's what makes it quite exciting for me to continue to do. Now, a couple of little bits of housekeeping that I'm going to hopefully not touch on for too long, because I do like to ramble. One thing that I have set up to support this podcast is an affiliation with Amazon. Now, there are a number of podcasts out there that do have this feature or this thing set up to support their podcast. So I decided to do a copycat and have my own. So on andysocial.net, there are a number of links on there where you can support the podcast by shopping through Amazon. So if you are a regular shopper through Amazon, go to andysocial.net and there will be a portal link in my menu bar that says something along the lines of the Andy Amazon portal or something like that. And click on that. And all it does is a unique link that takes you to Amazon. Nothing changes. You shop as normal. But what happens is after you've made whatever purchase you make, I get a commission from Amazon because I'm referring traffic to their platform. How that looks, how much money I make, I have no idea because I've only just set it up. But it's really cool. I have sent the link out to a number of people. So if you are somebody that regularly shops on there and for whatever reason you don't want to go to my website, just contact me directly. I'll give you the link. And what I'm trying to do as I find artists, writers, or anything where people are already selling products through Amazon, I'll be promoting those Amazon links as well. So if you do like, for instance, David Teak, who was previously on the podcast, the writer and comedian, he's got a number of books that he released that are available on Amazon. So I've got links on the show notes page for him. Previous musicians that have been on, there's a number of guys that have got CDs available via Amazon. So if you look on the show notes pages, on them, you'll find Amazon links there. So definitely click on all those things if you want to purchase those CDs or books or whatever it might be. Dr. Craig Hassed, who has co-written a number of books, but in particular, Mindfulness for Life. That book has an Amazon direct link, a referral link there. So how it looks or what sort of money I'll make out of it, who knows? But what I'm hoping is that it will eventually bring in enough revenue that it'll cover the cost for this podcast, because it is cheap to run a podcast, but it's still money that I have to pay every month, where it be the website hosting, the podcast hosting, the equipment that I paid for up front, the time that I spend, the editing that I pay for. There's a number of different things that are monthly expenses for me, and I pay it because it's a hobby. It's something that I love doing, but it'd be absolutely fantastic if this was self-funded and just paying for itself. So if you do use Amazon, it'd be absolutely awesome if you use that portal link to shop, and let me know if you do use it, just so I can keep a track and see if it actually works. But any help that you guys can do would be greatly appreciated. And I will look at a number of other things down the track as the podcast continues to get more and more listeners tuning in. I definitely love the idea of making this bigger and better. And I think the more that I can find support for the podcast, the more that I'll be able to give back to you guys, whether that be guests, events, giveaways, special offers, all sorts of things. Like, that's long down the track, of course, but it's all about making this thing bigger and better each time. you can use the code word antisocial dot, no, not .net, but you can use the code word antisocial on our Lord online store, which is lord.net.au/store. We are in the process of moving over to Bandcamp, and as a result, there's heaps of stuff on our Lord page that is dramatically discounted. There's like $10 t-shirts, there's heaps of bundle packs, there's all sorts of stuff on there. So definitely get on there. Not only are you going to find cheap stuff, but if you use the code word antisocial, you'll get 10% off anything on the store, and that's a valid code indefinitely moving forward. And I will hopefully have that code available on Bandcamp as well once we're completely integrated over there. But definitely make the most of that. If there's things that you've been holding off on buying, there's definitely a good opportunity now to get some sweet deals. Okay. Enough of the housekeeping. I'll do a little bit more in the outro. This episode features Annelise, and Annelise runs a blog called Metal Marketing, formerly known Metal Marketing Manager. But it's a blog about marketing, but it's but it's about assisting bands on any level. And as we talk about in the podcast, and this is a subject for me where I just ramble on and on and on. And luckily I met my match with Annelise, who had a lot of insight and a lot of opinions on what she thinks bands need to do that aren't doing, and a lot of things that I agree on that she did mention. But I think the big thing that we're finding here is that a lot of bands aren't looking at the bigger picture. They aren't trying to look outside the box, and maybe need to look at other industries and other businesses and seeing what works for them and the way that they can connect with their customers. And not that we would class fans as customers, but looking at it from a business perspective, a fan supports the band via merchandise, buying music, attending shows, whatever it might be. And so, as horrible as the word sounds, a fan can be seen as a customer. And not that we would just treat them coldly as a customer, because it's a very different environment being in the music industry, but we need to take some of those principles from business marketing and apply them into being in a band. Now, it sounds a bit wanky, and for a lot of people, I think people will glaze over and not find a lot of interest in this, but I think there are a lot of bands out there that have woken up to this approach and are having a lot of success from it. And what Annelise is doing with this blog is providing a resource for bands where they're going to get more insight and get a bit more education around different tools and resources and different approaches that they can take to really increase their fan base, engage with their fan base, and make the most out of their fan base. That's probably the biggest thing that I took away from this. And it's all about really making the most of the people that support you already. And as a result, you will find that you'll get more and more people following what you do. And if you're not in the band, but maybe you run your own business, or maybe, there's something that you do, you might have your own online blog, or you might have your own podcast. I know there's a few podcasters that listen to this. Whatever you do, it's all about building yourself and connecting with other people and getting engagement and building interest in what you're doing. And as wanky as it sounds, it's building your brand. So have a listen to this. I think there's a lot of great takeaways from it. All the show notes are on antisocial.net. I'll have a link to Annelise's blog. There's a lot of opportunity here, and I think Annelise is going to have some really exciting months ahead where she is going to make a lot of headway and help a lot of artists really achieve great things. And I think if you are a musician and you're looking to find some additional support, definitely hit Annelise up, because even if it's just asking a few questions and getting a little bit of an insight, or maybe utilizing her services more, to provide some marketing assistance or, digital promotion or whatever it might be, there's definitely some opportunities there. So anyway, enough rambling, because I've been rambling on for quite some time. Please enjoy my conversation with Annelise. I don't know where to start, to be honest, because I think the first thing that I was really curious about is I didn't realize that you'd moved to the Netherlands until a few months back, when I think we just started talking and you were mentioning, you were talking about your blog, and I started paying attention to what was being posted through there, and we sort of been messaging backwards and forwards. But until then, I think I'd seen that you were overseas, but as you mentioned the other day, you've been going to festivals almost every year for the past 10 odd years. So I just assumed, oh,
Yeah.
well, you're just in Europe, seeing some shows and whatever. And it wasn't until just recently that I realized that you're actually living there. So I guess just probably to kick it off, how long have you been over there, and was there a main reason?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we moved over we're only here for about another 2 more weeks before we start our journey back home for now. But we moved I quit my job in in July last year. And then in August, we did about a 1 month holiday, went to a couple of festivals, and then settled in the Netherlands probably right at the end of August. So my partner, he was doing some study. I was looking for work. That was probably the main real reason we moved over here. But been an interesting challenge, a very different country to live in. Been ups and downs and all sorts over it. But you know what? Surprisingly, out of all the European countries here, I would say that the Netherlands actually probably has one of the best metal scenes I have ever encountered. We were going to gigs 3, 4, 5 nights a week, and nothing's in Amsterdam either. It's all here where we are in Utrecht and down in Tilburg. So we probably see most of this country going to gigs actually. So it's been
That's
pretty cool from that perspective.
That's awesome. I guess, and look, being a fan of music, and especially metal in particular, I
Mm.
don't think you can be in a better part of the world. So you're pretty lucky in far as your location goes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think as an Australian, I just kind of assumed, if you really wanted all the metal, you go to Germany, you go to Finland or Sweden or Norway or something. But you know what? I think actually the Netherlands has the best scene, and it really shocked me.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, I've traveled through, well, not all of Europe, but a decent amount of Europe. And I always thought the Netherlands would be, if anybody was going to migrate anywhere in Europe from Australia, the Netherlands would probably be one of those easier places. And obviously, there's challenges with cultural differences and
Yeah,
in
yeah,
trying to
definitely.
settle in. But I guess compared to, as you said before, like Germany being a big mecca for that type of music and whatnot, and especially Scandinavia and whatnot, the Netherlands seems to be probably an easier place than a lot of the other places that people would probably gravitated towards.
Yeah, we thought that too, to be honest. It took me 3 months to find a job, and obviously that's why I started the blog.
Yep.
I was just bored out of my brain, and I was thinking, what on earth can I do with myself? And, I'd had the idea in my head of starting this blog. Back in 2011 when I was speaking to Vo from Darker Half, and he was just sort of asking, a couple of advice and some tips and all of that. And I said, I really want to do a blog and, try to help people out there. So that was sort of the main reason I started it finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in the sake of getting a visa, that was really easy. Setting up things like bank accounts, finding somewhere to live, all of that was a nightmare. It took forever. It was like a really long, convoluted process of things can't be done online and a very rigid process. So, like I said, we struggled a bit more than we expected to. But, I mean, the language barriers, they're not so hard. But
Mm.
a lot of the jobs, especially for me in marketing, they wanted people who could speak, English and Dutch.
Yep.
So I was really lucky that I got my job with a company who specialized, mainly with an American audience. So they wanted a native speaker. So for me, it worked out well in the end. But yeah, definitely much more tricky than I expected. But yeah, I'd say to anyone, it's not too bad of a country to give it a go in, but I think you're going to have challenges no matter where you go, whether it's language or jobs or money or,
Oh, I
the
think
cost of living in some Scandinavian countries is quite extremes.
absolutely. And I think, as you said, no matter where you go, I mean, you could really rip it back to a basic perspective of it. Even if you're moving from a town or a state or whatnot, there's always going to
Oh,
be things you've got to
definitely.
adjust to, and depending on where you go in the world, those extremes can be amplified. But I've always loved the idea of relocating somewhere for 6 to 12 months or even longer. So I was fascinated when I realised that you'd actually moved over there for a period of time. So is there a reason? Is it just because your partner's time has ended there, and so that's why you're both coming back now, or is it
Oh, look,
something?
it's a combination of reasons. I mean, we're both only children, and my parents aren't in the best of ways at the moment, and same with
Yeah.
his mum. But I mean, that's probably the most reason. But I think if we didn't have too many issues, we'd definitely give London a go. So I think we're going to come back to Australia, try and get some work, and then save up for a bit and try again.
Yeah, cool. No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And I guess depending on where things go with all I mean, especially with your blog, which I'll get to in a sec. I'm totally
yeah,
stalling
sure.
here, but but depending on where those things go, that'll obviously help with opportunity, especially being in the UK or even back in Europe. It definitely has more benefits there. But then again, what you've begun to do with the blog could potentially have a lot of maybe even a bigger impact back here in Australia, just because in some ways, and it is changing, but we've always been a little bit behind the eight ball and a bit slower than everyone else to try and meet up with the worldwide standard, whatever that standard is. And it's getting a lot better now, but maybe there's a benefit there of the blog doing better in Australia than overseas, but who knows?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it would probably hopefully take off a bit better once I get back home and, I can start going to gigs and saying to people, hey, noticed you're in this band, do you want to come check it out? Try and give some advice, give some help, and, just do whatever I can do to, help us get up to those European standards, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And so, good segue. Do you want to tell me a little bit
Very
about, do you want to tell me a bit about Metal Marketing Manager?
Yeah, sure. So, pretty much as I was saying before, the idea came from, when I started working in marketing, and, a few friends in bands were like, oh, can you help me with this? Or, can you give me some ideas about how to do that? This was about 5 years ago. So I've been wanting to do it pretty much ever since. But, as life gets in the way, and got over here and had nothing to do, was looking for a job, and, it's kind of like, maybe I'll start that blog. So I got it all set up and, tried to pick a name, try to find a domain name that wasn't already taken, which was a bit more of a challenge than I expected. So I tried to think of something, a bit cool, but I guess it wasn't as cool as I thought. But I ended up with Metal Marketing Manager. I've sort of shortened it to Metal Marketing, but it's going to cost me about $700 to get metalmarketing.com.
Yep.
So, hence why I've kept the URL as is. So, the blog's really just me, just writing, all of my experience and knowledge that I've gained over the last 5 years, just working in marketing, online websites, social media, all of that, and just seeing how I can apply it to, bands, just to give them ideas and tips and, really just to help. I mean, I've grown up around music. I love music, and I've had so many friends in bands over the years. So it's really honestly from my end just to trying to give my advice to them, give them help where I can, and if anyone wants to hire me for some services and whatnot as well, I'm definitely available for that too. But I find that with me for marketing, when I go online and read blogs, I just get ideas and think, I really want to, this is a great idea. This is a great starting point. Now that I've got a little bit of an idea of how to do it, I'm going to go do it. So that's kind of what I'm trying to provide to, various bands or musicians, in Australia, all around the world, wherever really.
I mean, the big thing that I've noticed, at least in Australia, for the most part, and there are a few exceptions to the rule, especially now it's changing, and there's a lot more bands that are getting a lot more recognition here at home, but especially overseas. But a lot of bands still have that local band mentality, that not so much that no one would ever admit it, but they approach it like they would as a hobby, and they don't take it seriously. And whenever someone mentions that the band is a business, it's a bit of a taboo statement to make, and there's this romantic view of that it's all about artist integrity and being creative and whatever that might be. But I think a lot of bands just miss the point, and I think if they apply things that look, a lot of musicians aren't exposed to it and never been exposed to marketing and don't understand how those things work. So I think there is definitely there's definitely a market there for it. For bands to pick it up and just look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really hard being, in Australia and being so far away from everything else. Like if you want to go tour in America or Europe or wherever, you're looking at about $7,000 down, in return flights, or probably actually more than that. It's probably like about $14,000 in flights if you've got 5 or 6 members before you can even get over there. So I think a lot of the small, that smaller local gig mentality or the local band mentality is just based on the fact of you're only looking at where you can go. And if Australia is your only option, then maybe you're not really as invested, or, if you're only just starting out. I mean, you look at the industry now, back in the day, back in the 80s, before I was born, it was a community. It really was there. And I think a lot of that still exists, but especially now with a lot of these festivals falling through, some of these promoters aren't taking bigger risks. There's no venues, well, not no venues, but there's not as many venues to play at. Like the Gaelic's gone. Where do people do their album launches now? You've got like Newtown Social Club, which is tiny. You've got the Baldface Stag, which is, it's a pretty cool venue, but it's, from last time I looked at it, which was quite a few years ago, it's kind of an expensive venue to play at as well. I put on a show there and didn't even break even on that one. And, it was quite hard. So I think just not having a lot of places to play at also makes it really challenging, because, I mean, you've got to focus on how are you going to be bringing in the money to pay your rent, your bills, to put food on the table, whether it's just for yourself or whether you got, young family or whatever. So I think especially in Australia, there's that mentality of I have to provide for myself first and then the band comes second. But you definitely see a lot of people who, band is number one and then everything else is number two. And I think those people who are the ones who are really, doing everything they can, live, breathe, die metal, die music kind of thing, that kind of attitude. But it's certainly hard in Australia, and I think that if you do want to get noticed, around Europe to try and get onto some of these tours, you will need to pick up the game on social media, on your website, being able to have your music being accessible through sites like Bandcamp, Spotify, all of that as well. So I think if that mentality is there, as you treat it like a business, you spend however many hours writing and recording all of this material to then get on stage wearing, ripped jeans with like a hole in the crotch and your daggy old sneakers. Like, you really need to put that time and effort into, the kind of image you want to produce, the kind of image you want to promote to your fans. Like, and you need to do it from day one if you can. But I mean, it's not to say that if you've been around for 10 years, you can't have a bit of an image overhaul.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
no, absolutely.
you go.
Keep going. No, that's all right. No, I mean, you nailed on the head. And I guess it comes down to, I think the big thing that I notice with bands is that there's not a great deal of unity within the people in the band as far as what they want or the direction that they want or the vision that they've got. And I think, there's probably an agreement across, the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people in the band that, well, we all want to play in front of a lot of people. We want people to buy our music. We want to be able to record and we want to tour with big bands and, just those general vague goals that every band stereotypically wants to do. But I think a lot of bands don't sit down and go, all right, well, where do we want to be in 6 months' time? Like, what do we want to achieve in the next 6 months? Where do we want to be in 12 months' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? And where's our focus? Is it something like across the board with 4 people in the band? Is this something where we can afford to put all of our energy 100% into the band? Or do we have other things where we have to be a lot more mindful and go, all right, well, we need to balance this between, some people have got careers, some people have got families and whatnot. And it's not always a defeating thing. It's just that everyone's got to be on the same page, and you can still achieve a hell of a lot with all those other things that are going on in everyone's lives. But it's just the big things that I've found, and we found in our band as well, is that sometimes if one person or 2 people in the band are off on a slightly different tangent, it can throw everything out of whack very quickly. And I think we're always dreaming about these big, wonderful, amazing things, but they're always the stereotype goals but we've never put a plan in place to get even halfway there, let alone to that end goal, or whatever that end goal might be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, really important, for businesses, for bands, even for your own personal life, just to kind of have, a bit of a strategy in place, sort of sit down, try to get everyone on one page to say, hey, look, this is what we need. This is where we want to start. As you were saying, this is where we want to be in 6 months, and look at it every 6 months and, do a budget every 6 months. Like, as well, because you sort of see these bands who are starting to get really successful and they're getting all of these tours, and then all of a sudden a member has to leave because they can't get time off work, or they can't get time away from their family, if like I said before, if they've got a little kid or something like that. You can't just up and leave them. Well, I mean, it happens, it's not like leave the family, but you still go on tour, and the kids will get over it when they get older, of course. But like, and that's a huge thing. And I think budgeting is a huge thing that bands will need to do, whether it's you putting in individually, you're putting in equal amounts. If it's one guy's project and everyone else is along for the ride, who's paying for it then? Who pays for the airfares? Who's heavily invested and who's not? And I think as well as, just having a look at a strategy. I mean, Google is the answer for everything. Just go online and, have a look at marketing strategies, company strategies, brand strategies. There's tips, there's blogs, there's everything out there. I mean, I'm going to certainly, in the next 12 months, I've got about a bajillion ideas of different blogs that I want to write about, brand strategy, about marketing, about budgeting, about, I've got people lined up to speak with about, the top 10 tips and top 5 tips or whatnot to how to save money on tour, how to get onto these tours, what promoters are looking for. I've got so many ideas in my head, just not enough time to write them all, but I will get there. And that's the thing. And I think as well, maybe in Australia, we need to have some workshops, some master classes, get some of these guys in bands who've been around for the last 20 years, find out how they did it. They're willing to pass their knowledge on to the next generation. I know a handful of people myself who would just love to sit down, find a pub, find a room somewhere and just get all these, these new musos in there, tell them how, well, not tell them how to do it, but just give them advice, suggestions. And that's the other thing as well. When you're in a band, you've got to be willing to accept the realities of it all. You're not going to be a millionaire. You're not going to be getting, the headliner spot on any of these huge tours for 20, 30 years if you're still around then. Like, you really need to think about what your goal is, as we were saying, and just plan for it. And I think it's realistic to expect, well, not to expect, but to aim for those sorts of things, to aim to play on Varken or Grasspop or Download or any of them. I think any Australian band can do it. You just need to have that mindset of a European band, whether it's pick up and move to Europe or just budget well enough so that you guys can tour overseas and, go find yourself a good manager, go find yourself, people who have contacts and use them.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you mentioned about, I guess, or just got me thinking about, how big the fan base is or what you want to achieve. And it's good to have high hopes or high goals as far as wanting to have a gigantic fan base or play in front of huge crowds. But I was speaking to a previous episode on the podcast, speaking to David Teak, who's a writer and a comedian, and we were talking about how to get more fans and how to get more people to appreciate what we do and trying to make our fan bases bigger and whatnot. And one thing that I've learnt probably over the last year or two is that instead of shooting in a very open and vague direction, really pinpointing one particular segment of people or, finding your core audience. And your core audience, if you're in a local band, might only be 20 people. It might only be 50 people at the most. But if you focus on those 20 or 50 people to begin with, and you make sure that those people know and they feel that they are a part of the band or that they're appreciated and whatnot, and you make sure that they're always supportive, like you're supporting them because they're supporting you, then
yeah, definitely.
you start building a community. And there's a few, I can't remember the guy's name, but I really should have written this down beforehand, but it's about 1,000 fans, and it's basically saying if you've got 1,000 people that love what you do, then that's it. That's all you need. Because if you can get that, if you can get that core 1,000, then it will flow on from there. And to scale it down to make it a bit more realistic for a lot of bands, if you can find 100 people, and 100 people love what you do, they're always in touch with you. They're buying every piece of art, whether it be, if you're an artist, but artwork, but music, merchandise, whatever it be, every time it's released, they're coming to your shows and they're appreciated and you're supporting them. Then people from the outside start to look in and go, you know what, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that club, that posse, that group of people. It seems to be a collective. It seems to be more than just those people in the band. There seems to be a community or it's a brand that's being created. And I think if people focus small on the people that are around them, instead of, like I've used the example in the past, we went through a period where we wrote a few songs hoping that we could widen our appeal to get a bit of a crossover into the rock segment. And we wrote some songs and we still play them and we love it. But we wrote the songs with a bit of intention behind it. But then what we did is when we went out and did a tour off the back of that album is that we deliberately tried to play in a few non-metal venues, played with a lot of rock bands, sleaze rock bands, just to try and blend that crossover and get more people in. And sometimes it worked, but other times it didn't. And we ended up in some ways alienating our core base because we were trying
to focus on everyone else.
And we're pushing our fans into areas that they weren't comfortable or weren't interested in. So we were suddenly playing with bands that people didn't like, or we were playing in venues that they weren't comfortable going to or weren't interested in going to. And so it was a good test in a way, but in hindsight, we sort of went back and thought, you know what, we do have a fan base. We've got a core group of people. Let's go back to them and focus straight on them and really make sure that we're doing everything we can to show our appreciation for them, whether that be offering them, exclusive things, giving them discounts. I've got like this little makeshift loyalty program that I have with the guys that order from us constantly, where I'm hooking them up with things and whatever it might be, and it's just ways that we as a band can build a community around the band. And I think trying to get to my point in a very roundabout way is that I think for a lot of bands, it's not being pessimistic, but it's just being a little bit real to start off with. And you can aim for the stars and you can aim for big success and huge crowds and whatnot. But I think if you aim too high, you're not going to be able to get there because you're not focusing at that core root level to begin with those people. So I think if people can be a bit more realistic to begin with, then they've got something to build on.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's not a very different mentality to what a lot of these huge brands have. And I mean, I try to, mention brand a lot in a lot of my blogs and, what it means about brand. And I think I'll probably go back and do sort of a really basic one just to really, so bands know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it. But, companies I've worked for, in the past have that exact same mentality. It's like, who are our customer? Who is our main demographic? And you can find out through YouTube analytics, through, your Facebook pages. You can go in and have a look at who your age brackets are. You can see who's male and female. You can see which cities they're coming from. And this information is so important because then you can target it in Facebook ads. If you know that, let's say, for example, you're a Sydney band, your main core group of fans are between 18 to 25. They're female all of a sudden. Let's just pretend it's female rather than male because it's always going to be male. But let's just go with that. Just say, they're female and they're based in Wollongong. I'm just picking some random places here. And that means that, for those, say, 50 people or 100 people, there's going to be, they've got a group of friends who probably all think the same. So if then you target your ads to that core group of people, you target them and their friends, then all of a sudden your ads are popping up in their friends' feeds. And the mentality is if one person likes you on Facebook, then most of their friends are more willing to like your page based on the fact that they know that that friend already likes you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's just a word of mouth. It's like you go out and you buy something, you say, man, this was awesome. Your friend's more likely to buy it because you have it. And the same works for Facebook pages. If you've got a friend or a person on there who likes the page, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of their friends will also like you too. So when I do a lot of advertisements on Facebook, I try and do fans and their friends, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And especially, that's the other thing, what you're saying is by building up a group of supporters in, the marketing world, we call them brand ambassadors. And these are the people who, I wouldn't say you necessarily need to give them more time or more dedication, but, interact with them, be social. It's social media. If they comment on something, ask them a question, ask them how their day is, make them feel important, because if they're the ones who, really love your music and they're the ones who's going to be posting, hey, check out this band, they're the ones who's going to be buying the merch, just like you said, they're the ones who's going to be going out there and giving all this free advertisement for your band to all of their friends and, just wearing your t-shirts at other gigs. People are going to be like, oh yeah, I wanted to check them out. Maybe this person, they seem really lovely and friendly. I might go check them out based on that. So you want to create a real tight community of these brand ambassadors who go out and sell for you. And that's definitely the mentality that all of these big brands, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but that's what they do. And there's a band who's just started up. Martin Sweet was the guitarist in Crash Diet, and he's just started his own new band at the moment called Sweet Creatures. And, they're sort of starting from scratch again, even though he's come from, a bigger band. He still has to start from the bottom on the way up. And what I thought was really amazing is he's actually started this community. It's like a closed community on Facebook where all the dedicated fans can go. And right now, they're playing with merchandise ideas. So he's actually given the fans who have gone onto this community the artwork, and the fans are creating different designs and t-shirts, and they're voting, and, they're coming up with names for what their little community is going to be called. I think they're Sweetches in the end or something really cute like that. But you know what? He's building it from the base up, and that's what bands need to do. You need to find people who love your music, and you give them, everything you've got, and they're the ones who are going to help you get to that next level.
Yeah, for sure. And absolutely nailed it. And I think a lot of people, I think there's been a shift over the last maybe 5 or 10 years where I think if I'm really sort of talking on a high level and stereotypically, if you looked at the 80s and the early 90s, you had bands that were very removed from the fans. It was very much
Definitely.
a case that, musicians and bands were looked at from from the stage only, and if you got to ever meet them, it was like meeting the Pope. It was just something that was it was untouchable. They were untouchable people in a way, or they're perceived that way. And then once
Yeah.
the digital age kicked in, especially social media, suddenly we were getting a lot more insight, and a lot more of that behind the scenes stuff started to kick in. So you found a lot more bands started doing video blogs of, oh, we're in the studio recording, here's a couple of random photos. And that was about it, but that was the start of the shift. And then it really opened up. And now it's quite weird, especially thinking back probably even 5 years ago. But for a lot of bands, and a lot of bands that I've listened to since day dot, a lot of them I could reach out to in some way, whether it be through Twitter, through Facebook, through websites with email, Instagram, whatever it might be. And it's not always a case that you're going to be able to engage in a conversation, but you're able to reach out to somebody where they are able to see you. You're able to make contact with somebody, and your name will be in their face, however, whatever way or whatever reason that you're approaching them. But there's that close-knit connection that you have with artists these days. And a lot of artists have really taken advantage of that and have become extremely interactive. And I mean, there's a lot of famous musicians who have been well known for being interactive on, say, Twitter of all places, but also Facebook as well. And now people are starting to, because it got to a point where there was a bit of friction there between, should artists remain untouchable and removed from, like, still have that mysterious element to them where the fans remain fans only and that's it. And when bands started to break down those walls, I think there was a bit of resistance from both sides, where they didn't want that dream of how it used to be shattered. And now I think a lot of bands are seeing the benefits of coming across as just a person, like, just, here's the human element of me as an artist. This is the things that I like. These are the things that I do when I'm not on stage playing or in the studio. I like, this is the type of food I like to eat. Here's a picture of my cat or my dog, or, but it's that candid stuff that's really connecting with the fans. And I think that's really helping to build those communities.
Yeah, look, I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. And again, depending on the band, the style of music, what you're trying to achieve, I think, it will work differently for different bands. Just being able to be accessible to your fans, I think that's the thing. You don't need to respond to every single fan. I think if a lot of bands might feel like there's a huge pressure of all of a sudden we've got all these people contacting us, and I have to respond to every single one of them. Like, you don't have to respond to everyone, but just give them a like or a mention, or if it's really important, that's cool. But, you don't feel like you have to devote your entire life all of a sudden to this community, but just send out a general thanks, and we've got your messages, we really appreciate it. And I think obviously bands who are trying to be a bit more mysterious, a bit more those who wear your corpse paint or your hoods over the top, and you want to remain mysterious, of course you're not going to go out and say, hey, I'm eating at the local restaurant with my family, and this is my kid and this is my dog. You're not going to go out and be really public. You're going to try and keep that mystique and keep that. And I think you can make that work really well. You just have to do it. You just have to think about, what am I trying to achieve? Who is my target audience? What do I want to do? So maybe rather than trying to be super personal, you could just recommend other bands that you like, or, about the festivals you're playing at, and sort of do like, a behind the scenes thing, but not really necessarily revealing anything about who you are, or, any of those kind of things you're trying to keep mysterious. Like, there's different ways you can engage, like either through your merchandise or through various different ways you can think of. But again, I think for these bands who do want to be more social, you can take it from two different angles. You can have a band page where it's specifically stuff about the band, and again, there's like an 80-20 rule in marketing, where you're supposed to be 20% about selling your products and selling yourself, and 80% social, asking what your fans are up to, asking what they're doing, who's coming to these gigs, trying to get them to retweet different things, if it's a band member's birthday, like the more fun, the more social. So it needs to be 80% social, 20% sell. And that's the mentality that most of these big brands out there have. And as well, and I think if you do want to be a bit more social as a band, have individual profiles for each band member. And then those band members can be like, this is my dog, this is my cat, I'm going here to eat. You can do all of that stuff on your own personal page and keep it away from the band if you want. So you can sort of look at it from a few different aspects in that kind of way of, this is the band, this is what we do as a band. These are the band members, this is what we do as individual band members. And sit down and have a chat about it to the rest of the guys in the band. Like, it's not lame or dorky. Like, it's a business plan, why else are you doing music if not to get it to the people? Like, think about it. Take some time, call a band meeting, go to a pub, drink a couple of beers. Okay, maybe don't drink a couple of beers, but take a notepad and take some pen and paper so you'll at least remember it all the next morning and what the plan is. But, sit down and have a chat about these things with the rest of the guys. Like, like they say with the domestic partnerships, rather than being, so generic about, the guys do this in the household and the girls do this. Like, you might get into a band and you think, okay, the lead singer, he's going to be the main person who does all the tweeting and this, that, and the other. But you know what? The bass player, he might be the person who loves tweeting, and the singer might have no interest in the world. Like, talk about who wants to do what. Maybe one guy can take care of the Facebook, one person does Twitter, one person does Instagram. And then you're going to have 3 different separate lots of content, and you're going to have 3 different platforms that are all so different, which will give fans a reason to want to like you on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Like, what really gets on my nerves is when a band has a Facebook page and then they just send automatic updates to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's just like one piece of content going to like 6 different platforms, and it's all the same. Like, you'll go onto Twitter, for example, and you'll see like the first 2 sentences and then like an FB link, and it's like, oh, they didn't actually do anything. They just posted something from Facebook. Like, Twitter is supposed, use Twitter for Twitter. If you don't want to tweet, don't have a Twitter account. Actually go on, write a 140-character tweet, put a photo on there, write something different. Use the hashtags. I mean, hashtags are so important. That's what they're there for. Like, really take advantage of each different social channel, and don't just treat social media as I write one thing, I send it to all. So that's a big thing for me. And in some of my blogs, I've also mentioned, if you don't have the time to do that, there's scheduling tools. I mean, I use Buffer. I pay to use Buffer. You can use a free version of it as well. So it actually allows you to upload all of your accounts. I think it's only got access to like LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. You can't use Instagram or anything, unfortunately, on this particular platform. But I sit down on, say, like a Saturday morning, and I'll write 2 to 3 weeks worth of content all in one go. It takes me 2 hours. I get it out of the way, and then I don't have to think about it for another month. So I'll write it all up for Facebook, and then I'll go into Twitter and I'll write a whole new set of tweets that are, similar but different to the Facebook post. And then I'll get them all scheduled in, put in the times, put in the dates, then I'm done. Don't have to think about it for another month. So there's definitely, tools out there that are available for you to be able to have the time to think, okay, I want to write this on Twitter, I want to write this on Facebook. And then if you can't use a scheduling tool for Instagram, then keep Instagram for gigs, or when you're on the road, and only use it for that, because then you've got your phone in front of your hand, you've got your free Wi-Fi, and you can, be a bit more social, and again, sending different content to different platforms.
I think that's probably a big thing. Is I think people get overwhelmed with the number of different outlets that are out there, and then there's that stress about having to be across all of them. And I think there's definitely benefit, or there's a bigger benefit of being across all those platforms. But as you said, I think if you're not using the platforms properly, then it's probably better that you're not using them at all, and concentrating on 1 or 2 that you're actually effective with, and you're actually using them properly. But at the same time, it's really about time management with a lot of this stuff. And I think when people go, there's 6 or 7 different places that we need to post updates or pictures or whatever it might be, is that, as you said before, with your scheduling, if you dedicate 1 day a week, or 1 day a fortnight, or a couple of hours a month, or whatever it might be, depending on where you're at, that you just sit down and that's all you do, and you schedule and plan and get ready to and collate the pictures and whatever it might be for the next week, or for the next month, or for the next 3 or 4 months, if they're just generic sort of things and updates and things that you got to continue to repost over time. Get them all scheduled and set them up, and set them and forget them. And then obviously...
Yeah, and then all you need to do is come back on the day just to make sure, if people are commenting, you give them some likes, or you respond or whatever. Make sure there's no negativity and all of that as well. But yeah, you can pretty much set and forget. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've started to do it with... I've been doing it with the band page for a while, and I don't use it too much, but I sort of have a few core posts that I want to make sure that they're semi-regular, in the sense that a couple of times a month they'll pop up. But what I'll do is I'll space the posts out enough that I've got room there to put what I would call live content, stuff that happens as it, like, announcements or new information, or there's a spontaneous photo that's popped up somewhere. And that way I've got enough wiggle room to put those posts in there, because the other extreme of it is that you've got people that flood their Facebook pages full of updates every day, and it's just too much.
There is such thing as too much. Yeah,
absolutely. And so you've got people that unfollow and unlike, and you lose people that way as well. So even with my podcast page, I use the scheduling tool a lot more than the band one. And I put posts up to 6 months in advance, especially when I do a new episode. I will schedule the YouTube replay of the episode once a month for 6 months in advance, and just to ensure that that's still getting some further coverage for the months to come. But I'll always make sure there's enough room, or I'm not scheduling any more than 1 or 2 at the max posts a day, if that. And that way I've still got windows there that I can post things as I find things, or new episodes or whatever it might be, without flooding people's feeds.
Yeah, definitely. And I think giving yourself some room to move is really good. Like, Twitter's Twitter. I mean, you can post between 1 to 5 times a day, and you're probably not going to get too many unfollows unless it's complete trash. But,
that's right.
You know, if you're posting different things and you're not posting the same thing over and over again, you know, Twitter's supposed to be constant feed. It's a little bit different. But Facebook, you know, I'd say depends on how many fans you've got, what you're trying to achieve. Is, you know, once a day, once every 2 days, maybe 3 times a week. Maybe that's all you need to post. Or, you know, I mean, I post once a week on Facebook, and now I've gone to every single day now on Twitter. You know, I was originally just doing fortnightly, but I think, you know, as you grow and as you've got more important things to say, you can say it a bit more often. And I think the really important thing that I've said a couple times on my blog, and especially if you're going to advertise your post, is have a call to action. Like, give people a reason to read your blog, to read your post, sorry. So pretty much what that is, you know, give someone a reason to either like it, to comment on it, or to share it. So whether it's asking a question, whether it's a new video, whether it's a link to your website that, you know, has a merchandise deal or a special offer or something like that to get a bit of a discount, or, you know, again, you know, it's social media. Don't just say, oh, this is our new video clip. You know, say, you know, this is our new video clip, but, you know, we recorded it over XYZ months, and, you know, we're really proud of it. What do you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Or what was your favorite? You know, if there was something cool that happened in it particularly, it's like, oh, you know, what did you think of this part? Like, give them a reason to interact with you. And again, you don't have to comment or respond to every single person who comments, because, again, that's going to get overwhelming. But, you know, like a couple, and then at the end of a day or two, to say, you know, thank you so much to everyone who responded. We really appreciated the feedback. You know, it's great chatting with you guys. We've got a gig coming up on this day. We'd love to see you all there. We're going to play the new song.
It's definitely about being interactive. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that. And I mean, we have the challenge with the band, because you've got to constantly think of things that are engaging. And there is also the paranoia of what appears to be a constant, talking Facebook specifically, with that the apparent constant changing of the algorithms that Facebook have, and posts having less and less of a reach over the last year or two. And I think there's a bit of whether there's a myth behind it or not, but I think there's a bit of pressure where people feel, well, the more that I post, the more that Facebook will recognize the page as being legitimate, and then in turn give those posts more reach. But which is fine, and makes a bit of sense, but you don't want that to be the result of you posting rubbish just to try and make your feed look active. And that's a really challenging thing for a band, is especially if you're a band where, if you're lucky, you've got a video clip. You might have a Bandcamp profile. You might have done a few gigs, but I think when you're looking stereotypically at those core resources that you have as a band, then I think people start to feel like they shouldn't be, but they feel like they're scraping the barrel of ideas to post. And you've really got to think about, what can I post that's going to be, well, interesting to start off with, but also engaging, where it's going to influence somebody to actually be passionate enough to click the like button, or really involved in the sense that they want to press comment and type something. And I think a lot of people probably get a little bit overwhelmed with it, because they're constantly trying to think of, what sort of question can I ask, or what can I write in there, or is this post really interesting? And I see a lot of bands that just post Facebook invites or events all the time, or they just post the same picture over and over again, or some really horrible, disgusting show flyer or something like that. And then they get pissed off that no one's interacting with them. So I think there's probably a lot of education that can be had just around Facebook itself. But
yeah, definitely.
But even just talking about social media in general is that there's so much that can be used so much content out there that you can create yourself without having to release a new video clip or without having to record a new song. There's so many things that can be posted, and if you don't have anything at that moment to post that's interesting or engaging, then just don't post. Hang 10 for a bit, like give it a day, give it a week or whatever it might be. If it dries up, it dries up, but don't just post for the sake of it, because you will lose. I think it's more damaging to not.
You'll lose fans. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I think the first thing to think is if I was a person who liked a band's page, would I like this post? That's the very first thing you should think about. Say, would I like this post? Would I comment on this post? Would I share this post? And if your answer is not yes to at least two of those, then maybe you should post the post. But I think as well, from a perspective of, with algorithms and stuff, I think for websites, that's definitely the case. If you're posting blogs more frequently on a website, the algorithms will work to make you look, more popular and more engaged, so that'll push you up in sort of your Google rankings. But I don't know about Facebook. I don't think it kind of works that way. I think it works, the more people who engage with your post is what makes it more relevant. I don't think by you putting 6 or 7 different posts every couple of days out there, if they're getting 0 likes, 0 comments, you're not actually helping yourself. You're probably pushing yourself down, in the rankings or algorithms or however it works. I personally, and general advice warning, blah blah, I would do one really good post a week, and I'd put a couple of bucks on it to boost that post. That's the thing. The minute you start getting more likes and the more comments, the more Facebook registers it as being an important, interesting, or an engaging post. So that's what's going to get you pushed up, not frequency. It's consistency. It's quality versus quantity. So Facebook's really looking for quality. Again, don't quote me on this, in your posts, because they want to know that other people want to know what it is. They're not going to put it in the news feed if they think no one wants to know what it is. They're trying to push interesting news. So I think, as I was saying before, right, one really awesome post a week. If that's all you've got in you, that's cool.
Yeah.
Put a couple of dollars on it, send it to your people who already like your page and their friends, and then wait and see. And that's the thing, there's analytics in Facebook. You can kind of see how all of your Facebook posts go. If you go into, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you go into your analytics page, you go into your posts, you can see how many impressions it's had, how many people have looked at it, how many clicks it's had, and go back and have a look what you've done. See what was popular, see what didn't work, and sort of make a bit of an idea from there. Say you posted a video and, it had a link to a different site and you got like 60 or 70 clicks on it. Maybe that's an idea to, maybe post more videos, but again, don't overdo it. Or if you asked a particular question or did a poll and it got a really great response, maybe, try and add that into the mix a little more often. But again, flooding your Facebook page with just shit posts that are just boring and no call to actions. Don't tell anyone anything. Always have a link on there. Have a picture. Facebook's visual. Either have a link, a picture, or a question.
Yeah.
Do a poll. Do something fun.
Absolutely. And I think there's definitely a balance, because I 100% agree with quality. And if your post is not interesting enough or doesn't have quality to it, and that's always subjective, but if it's not engaging enough or interesting enough for people, then people won't stop their newsfeed from scrolling down. They'll keep scrolling, let alone click on the like button or the comment or the share or whatever it might be. So there's definitely that element to it. And I think there is a bit of a balance, because I've seen that we might do an announcement for, I don't know, a video clip or a tour or a new song or whatever it might be, and we'll do the initial post of it, and it might be a external link with one word, or it might be a paragraph or whatever it might be, and suddenly I come back in probably 15 minutes, and that reaches probably been about 30 people on a 25,000 liked page. And you go, well, okay, what's going on here? So I'll delete that post and repost it, and I'll just change the amount of text that I have in that post. And then suddenly it starts to get engagement and it starts going. So what whether there's any truth behind that or not, I'm not sure. But I think there's a whole range of things that at least we try and do where we will mix it up. We'll have external link only with no text. We'll have, the YouTube link with text to it. We'll have text only posts. We'll have questions. We'll have pictures. We'll have pictures with text in the picture. We'll have pictures with text captions. And then we haven't done the polls. Actually, I don't think we've ever done a poll, which I'll have to think of something stupid to do as a bit of a joke, just to tick that one off tick that one off the box. Yeah. And actually, I think one interesting thing that I think's been neglected by a lot of bands, but used to get used quite a bit, is the notes. Whereas like a bulletin, I haven't looked at it for a while, but I know it's still there. So it'd be interesting
if you still do them. I mean, some people, I don't know if you've been following the Frank Zappa Dweezil, whatever his name is, saga. He's been posting a lot of notes, just doing this whole family nightmare of, what's going on.
Oh, right.
And all of this. A friend of mine's really obsessed with him, so I see all the posts come up when he likes the page or shares a post or whatnot. So I think you can still use notes, but yeah, I think unless you've got like I think they'd probably be really good for like a press announcement, like a PR release kind of thing, like something a bit more formal.
It depends on what it is for. It has to be appropriate.
I was at Grasspop on the weekend. They did like some note sections because obviously there was torrential rain and all this shit going on. So they were saying, everything's still working. There's still shuttle buses. Like I think it's really good for that kind of formal announcement. Someone joins a band, someone leaves a band, you sign to a record label, tour release, PR, album launch, all those kinds of things. And I think that's something that bands could maybe think about is again taking from a more like marketing perspective. When you do an album launch, like make it an event, do something really cool, have a dress up, have a theme. I know bands can't really afford to put on free drinks or anything like that, or sausage sizzle, but like you try and treat it like an event, like a real company would do an event. Like think about different ways you can do things. And again, Google is your friend. Go look at you can go look at case studies for different companies, and you can go like ideas for events, simple as that. Ideas for Facebook posts. If you're really stuck and you really suck at social media, what should I write on Twitter? There's a great blogger that I follow that I love. His name's Jeff Bullis. I read all of his blogs. Even if I think I know what I'm doing, I still like to read his blogs just to, have a confirmation of, I did that, it worked really well, or no, I tried that, it didn't work really well, but if he says maybe try this, it might work better. Like Google is your friend. Google is your resource. Like, don't, ever think not to use it. There's so many blogs out there. I mean, mine's probably not the best, and I'm cool with that. And what I'm trying to do is, go check out my blog, have a look. There's articles like, 5 bands that are writing likable content. I sort of looked at 5 famous bands who are doing different kinds of posts, what they're doing, just to try and give bands ideas of, what you can do. And, anything and everything. There is so much information out there. Like, read it. Spend 10 minutes, spend an hour. Like you can get pretty addicted to it.
Yeah,
marketing's
absolutely.
Pretty cool when you know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing, and it is starting to change a bit. I think bands don't have to rely on the existing paths that have been carved out for the last several decades by bands, that the only way you're going to get traction is by A, signing to a record label, B, going on tour, playing shows, doing those things. And, going back to what you said before about creating an event for something. I mean, one thing that was really cool about 8 or 9 years ago in Sydney is that there was a few bands, it didn't last very long, which was a bit of a shame, but a few bands started doing album launch parties. And it wasn't a gig, it wasn't at a venue. They'd hire out a bar somewhere, and they would just blast their new album that they just recorded over the PA, and you'd hear it and whatever, but it was more of an excuse to interact with the fans, have a social gathering. They had the merchandise there, they had the new album so you could buy it, or they'd have some promo copies or whatever it might be. They had a couple of friends come along and take photos, so then suddenly there's your social aspect for online. And there was no bar tab or anything like that. They just got a private room, and that alone made it exclusive. It made it special. It made it a bit of an event. And that's such a simple way of doing it with little investment of time and definitely little investment of money. And it can have such a dramatic impact. And there's a few bands that were doing it, especially in Sydney years ago. And I think it's definitely something that a lot of bands need to think of, whether it be exactly that or something else. But I think they need to think outside the box and go, what are things that we can do from a social aspect that's going to have people talk, have people wanting to be a part of the band, be close to the band, come out. And even those people that, I mean, for us, we could do something in Sydney, like, these like social gatherings and whatever it might be. And we then have fans in Melbourne, or we have fans overseas, and they're like, well, we can't make it. And we're like,
Yeah.
well, that's, sorry, but we're in Sydney. But the good thing is that it creates that demand, it creates that hunger, it creates that thing online where people start talking about it and they're expressing their interest, and suddenly you build more and more of a groundswell of appreciation for the band and wanting to be a part of that collective, part of that community, even if those people can't make it. So there's definitely, I mean, just when you mention the event thing, it's for me, it's been a big thing of things that I've suggested to other bands and other guys in bands, where you really, even if you are putting on a gig, something that you are performing, that don't just call it, hey, we're playing at the Ballface Stag on this date, and we're going to be playing with 3 other bands. Come along, it's $10 at the door. Like, give your gig a name. Give it like a ridiculous name. Like, call it, I mean, something better than this, but Metal Fest 2016, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Just give it something over the top and crazy, but it just makes it sound unique. It makes it sound like a special event, and then suddenly people think, oh, I better not miss out on this because it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, and I think there's that worry factor, especially, again, I'm going to go into stereotypes here about metal bands thinking, oh, but marketing's like such a dicky thing to do, it's just, I'm a band, I'm in this band, I'm just going to play my music. But like, you just need to really just get over that hurdle. And if you do really want to make it, you just need to get over it. Think about it like a business. Don't think, oh, if I do that, I'm going to sound like a dick, or, people are going to think I'm stupid because I did this. Like, who cares? Like, people are going to rock up if they're going to rock up. They're not if they're not. Try and give them, some sort of reason, excuse to get, if they've seen you 20 times before, why are they going to go again? What's the reason? Again, this is that call to action thing. Give them a reason. Even if it's something, how you go to events these days and there's like Twitter hashtags around. Like, I don't know if you've been to a wedding, or, your own's coming up, you're going to have on the table hashtag, Mr. and Mrs. 2016. Like, have your hashtags at these events. Say, put something on at the merch stand and say, look, if you buy a piece of merch, put a picture of you on social media wearing it. We'll give you a retweet. We'll give you a like. Give them a reason to, okay, if I buy this, my favorite band's going to like me on social media. Like, as a fan, how cool that is when a band, says, retweets or likes one of your photos. I've had so many bands that I've posted photos on Instagram and a band member will like it, and I'll be like, yes, that was so cool. Like, that's the feeling you as a band can give to people. Like, think about it that way. And again, if you follow bands on social, just give them a like. It's 2 seconds of your time. Like their post, because then their post can get into other people's feeds. Like, don't think, it's just another post, blah blah. Like, if you stop to read it and think, oh, that's cool, hit the like button. It's not hard to do. You're helping out other bands by doing it.
Oh, I go nuts I go nuts on my feed. Like, every band or every friend that I know that's in a band, regardless of the post, I'm always liking them just out of like habit now, because I just know how hard it is at times for posts to get any sort of reach and get traction.
Support each other.
Absolutely.
It's not a competition. And again, because the Australian music scene's I wouldn't say a crisis, but it's not what it used to be. Like, support each other. It's not a competition. You're not fighting each other for the headlining tours, Okay, maybe you are a little bit, but, like your friends' pages, like anyone you've got any friend you have in a band, sorry, I'm trying to get my words out here, go like their pages. It takes you 2 seconds, like their posts on Twitter, give them a retweet, just do what you can to, help the community, help the metal scene. It's only going to help everyone in the end, more if promoters see that, the scene's so strong, more bands are going to come here. I mean, we're pretty flooded with bands at the moment, which is quite lucky, but, if you like your friend's band on Facebook, and you like all their posts, they're going to have a better chance of then getting on said tour.
Yeah.
You just really think of it as like a community type thing, I think, is what we need to do to get the scene back to where it was.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I think what we're finding now, I've definitely noticed it, is that there's a whole range of bands that are coming up now that are just getting into their early 20s, and they've had more exposure to that digital age than probably the people that are sort of in their early 30s. And I think those people are embracing it a lot more, and I think they get it and they understand that they have to try things that are a little bit outside the box. And what you said before was
Yeah.
interesting about the marketing side of things, and worrying about how that's perceived and thinking it might be a little bit wanky and whatnot. It's not even a case that you have to do anything dramatic either. And, a lot of these things you can do behind the scenes without anybody even knowing, your
Yeah,
strategy,
exactly.
or trying something new. And yeah, okay, there's going to be times where you'll go out on a limb and try something a little bit different that no one else is doing, and you'll get a few haters out there. But in the end, you're not trying to convince the haters. You're trying to convince the people that already love you anyway, and
Exactly.
then feed off those people. And you could do your album launch at a bar in Sydney, and then you'll have a few haters going, oh, you think you're big enough to be able to do that, but
Exactly. Like
you'll
you just need
have
to get over that hurdle.
that's it. And you might have 20 people that rock up to it, and you're going to have a great night, and you take photos of it, you put it on social media, and then suddenly people go, oh man, I should have gone to that. That looks
That's
like it
really
was a lot of
cool.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's about creating that. And one thing actually on that topic, or that last little bit about documenting things. One thing that I've said to a few people in the past is, especially when a band will do a national tour, or even just local shows, especially in Sydney, because Sydney's struggled over the last few years with gigs. Big thing that we're trying to convince people to do is not just that you're coming out to see live music, but you're coming out for the social aspect. You're coming out to have a good time. It is an event. And what I used to see from clubs, so you used to have like Blink and Venom and all these places, is that there was, and some of these non-metal clubs, is that they always have a photographer walking around taking photos of the people that are there having a good time. And then that would be posted on social media, and then everyone would be tagging themselves in it and sharing the photos around and using them as profile photos. And then
Yeah,
people
yeah.
would want to go because they can see other people having a good time. So I started saying to people, especially guys taking photos of bands, I said, turn the camera around, take photos of the people in the crowd having a good time. Take photos of the people at the bar with their beers, having a chat and laughing, and people wearing their metal shirts. Like, show the type of people that are there and show that they're having a good time, because the people that are sitting at home on their couch going, stuff it, I can't be bothered, will start to see
Yeah.
that everybody else is out there having a good time. And then so the next time there's an event coming up, they'll go, you know what? I actually want to be a part of that now. And I don't think we've made a big focus of that over the last few years. We've just worried about what's on stage, which is good, but we're not worried about the bigger picture of the whole community, of what it's like to be going to local metal shows in Australia, or even international shows here in Australia, of what that feeling's like.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go onto, as I said, I was at Grasspop on the weekend, you go onto their Facebook page at the moment, and they've got like a whole bunch of videos that they've taken over the weekend, and it's 90% of the fans that were there,
Yeah.
doing silly things, saying hi to the cameras, taking photos, doing stupid things, it's about the vibe, it's about, getting there. And trust me, as being someone who's now living, in a foreign country where I don't really know anyone, it kind of sucks going to a gig and being like, oh, there's no one to chat to. Where are my friends? The amount of times I've just rocked up to a gig and just been like, oh, I miss Sydney. I miss, knowing that I'm going to go to a show. All my mates are going to be there. Even if, one of the support bands sucks, you're going to sit outside. You're going to have an awesome time with your friends. You go in, you check them out for 10 minutes and decide whether you like them or not. Still support this a lot, the opening acts, of course. But, if it's not your thing, like, again, just get there early. Try to support the scene. Do what you can. We're all in this together. We all love music.
Yeah.
Like...
Oh, absolutely. And
I just wish I was alive in the 80s to really just see what that scene was like, when you've got all these like awesomely old bands, playing like the Seven Hills Inn and all of those things. And, like back in the day where, Metallica was at the Horton, and, everyone knew everyone, and everyone were mates, and, everyone... just that mentality of when you're in the pit, someone falls down, you pick them up. Like, treat the bands like that. Treat everyone in the scene that way. Like, we're all metalheads. We all love the music. Don't be dicks to each other. And I know there's just that sort of snobbery, especially sometimes, in particular cities, particular scenes. But who's winning? Who's winning from it? Like, don't be a dick to your fans. If someone wants to rock up and they're not into the music, don't treat them differently. Like, encourage your girlfriends to come along to these gigs. They might not like the music. I mean, I go to my, with my other half, I go to all these gigs that, I would never listen to them on an album, but I get so much out of the shows. And, just by paying my entry ticket, the bands are getting so much out of me being there. And, I'll tweet a couple of pictures and say, had a fun night. It was a good show. Plenty of gigs I've been to that I've hated, which is awful because it's just not my style of music. But, make it a scene. Take your girlfriends, take your boyfriends, drag your friends along, drag your parents along. Like, make it social, make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it in other cities, like several years ago in Brisbane. Brisbane had such a great setup where they had a club there that regardless of who was playing, it was part club, part live venues. So you would have
Yeah.
a regular clientele every Friday, no matter what. It didn't matter who was playing. Some, depending if the band was quite good, then you would have a bigger crowd, but you would be guaranteed a minimum of 300 payers through that door every Friday night, because it was just, that's the place to go. That's the place where all the girls were going, so the guys were going there. All the musicians were going there to drink and to socialize and network, and it was great. They had a fantastic DJ. They had great music as well, and it was very much a like-minded place for people to hang out, and they really sort of embraced that, and the venue really embraced it, and they did quite well. And Melbourne's got a bit of that as well, in the sense that I think Melbourne's unique in itself because they've got a very much like a culture, an entertainment culture down there, where you go outside the house. You don't stay at home. There's more venues that do live music. There's more outlets, great places to party and drink and whatnot. And I think that culture's down there anyway. But it's very much a case that, hey, who's playing tonight? Oh, well, there's such and such at this venue. There's such and such at that venue. Oh, cool. They're all within like a 5-kilometer radius. Let's
go to all of them.
Let's gig hop, yeah. And
Yeah.
they're paying entry to 3 or 4 gigs that night and seeing a few bands here and there. And that's a stock standard night in Melbourne. It's fantastic, and they've created that. And I think that's part of that culture down there. And Sydney's struggled with that for various reasons. We've lost venues and we've lost a lot of bands as well as a result of that. Bands haven't really sort of stood the test of times or been willing to stick it out and put their head down and work hard. But I think it's more of a case of just really educating people and really making a big point to show that it's a social outing. It's something that's going to be a lot of fun, and people can go out there and the music's, it should be the focus, but you have to be realistic. It's part of the experience. And for some people, it's just a bonus. And for some people, it's a bit of background noise. But whatever it is, if the people are out there, and as you said, you pay to get in, the artists are still getting supported, the venues are getting supported. It's all helping each other. So it's just, I think we've spent too much time getting pissed off that no one's rocking up to these shows. And
have we given them a good reason to want to go? You really got to think about it as well.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is something that I lose track of time when I'm talking about it, because there's just so many things that can be done and so many things that can be improved on. But I think what you're doing with the blog, from what I've seen, and you've only had it up for a short period of time.
Couple of months.
Yeah, is that you're really opening up to bands to start thinking outside the box and not have to worry or clinch onto the old stereotypes and the old formats and the old ways of running a band. And you can really do well as a band and play twice a year, as an extreme example. You can do really well and just have online presence, and that's it. You could... you don't have to be in the public eye. You don't even have to show your face if you don't want to, if you market yourself the right way. Or you could go in the complete opposite direction, where you can be really successful, be very social and gig a lot and whatnot, and be successful every time in all the ventures that you choose to take. One thing that I was going to mention before, when you talked about pulling strategies and different teachings from marketing resources that are not from the music scene and whatnot. There's a podcast that I listen to, and I've mentioned a bunch of times in the past. It's called Small Business, Big Marketing, and it's an Australian podcast, and it is exactly what the title is. It's basic marketing for small businesses that are just starting out. And the host is used to be the marketing manager for Flight Centre, and it's absolutely fantastic. They never have music examples on there whatsoever, but the ideas that come from it can totally be applied into the music industry, can totally be applied into being a musician, a promoter, even being a podcaster, whatever it might be. It all works, and it transcends industries. It transcends whatever you're trying to do. The marketing principles are all there, and it's all about creating a story, creating your brand, your imaging, being interactive with people, having online presence, all these different things that just work no matter what. And I think the more that bands start thinking outside that box and looking into other areas, other industries, and saying, well, why does that work for that business? Why does that work for that brand? What can I do from that and create an idea based off what they're doing? And there's no rules. So that's the cool thing. I mean, there's certainly things that work better than others, and there's certainly things that you shouldn't do.
You've given me an idea for another blog. Have to do like find a big company like Starbucks or something, see what their strategy is and find how you can apply that to a band.
Yeah,
Like,
it could be four or
there's
five.
probably plenty of examples.
Oh, absolutely. And there could be just 4 or 5 really simple concepts. And I think
Yeah.
there's certainly things that are big no-nos, but I think there's
Yeah.
the a great thing about being in a business in general, but especially being a musician and being in a band, is that there are no rules. There's no map. There's no clear way to get from point A to point B. There are a number of ways that work, but there's always an opportunity to really create something new and really be a pioneer, especially now. I mean, especially when, labels have disappeared, it's harder and harder to get distribution in certain ways in the old physical form, but there's so many new opportunities pumping out there now. And the bands that are really having success are the ones that are just doing things that are completely new and fresh and different. And they're the things that are engaging people, whether it be, crowdfunding in the past, which I think might be getting a little bit stale now, but that worked for a short period of time because it was fresh, it was new. And it's just trying to find these things that are going to grab people and moving with the times and not being stubborn and stuck in the old ways.
Yeah, and I think that's the other problem with marketing is that, and just social, online, digital, there's just so many new things happening. You just really have to be careful. Like, it's cool to jump on a bandwagon and try something new, but, just have a think about, how many platforms you're on, whether it's worth it, with time versus cost, to be on all these different platforms. If you're just sending out like 20 shit posts where you could just be doing like 3 really great ones, is that worth your while? Or if you've only got 20 followers on Instagram, is it worth having an Instagram page? Like, and yeah, like I said, just trying to keep up with all the different things and all the new apps and all the new techniques and algorithms and everything that's happening, every single day, if not every hour, in social and online. It's difficult. So I think you just need to pick and choose your battles.
Absolutely. And I think just maybe on the just touching very, very briefly on crowdfunding, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I
was wondering if you were going to bring this up.
But I think just touching on that, and also what you just said then, it really comes back to what we said at the start, and having an idea of what you want as a band. Like what image do you want to portray out there? What's your core audience look like? What kind of things does your core audience like? And that could be non-music related. What type of people typically like or follow the band and listen to the music?
Yeah.
And out of those platforms, what do these people generally use? And a lot of people might not use Tumblr, so don't use Tumblr. Don't waste your time on Tumblr. Yeah. A lot of these people don't use SoundCloud. Don't use SoundCloud. And these people primarily are active on Facebook and Twitter, so focus your energy there. And then going to crowdfunding, it's the same thing. For us as a band, we've seen people we know have a lot of success with crowdfunding, but we've seen a lot of friends that have jumped on that bandwagon and tried to ride the gravy train and have come up very, very short. And if anything, it's probably hurt their image a little bit because it's sort of made them look like they're not very popular. It makes it look like they don't have many fans, or that they don't have a very good product, or their music's not good enough.
You can't really go into something like that without a strategy, without a plan. What are you offering people? What are you giving them for their money? What do they get out of it? I think, again, if you're going to do something like that, make it very specific. If you just want money to record an album, don't set up some whole big campaign to then include live shows and all this other crap. Just be really specific. If you need help for a tour, if you can't get over to a particular country, again, just focus on that. If you just do what you can do. Like, don't try and be everything for everyone. It's never going to work, regardless of whether you're in a band, whether you're whatever you do in your life. It's just as a person, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're not going to get very far. Like, again, you need a strategy. Like, if you're going to have like a membership type club sort of aspect, what is it going to include? Have a think about it. Will they get access to shows? What shows won't they get access to? If you're only a support band for a huge international headliner, you ain't going to get a free ticket to that show. You'll still have to pay. So you've still got to think about, what you're able to offer. Again, sit down, write it out, make a strategy, have a 6-month goal, and then at 6 months, reassess. Is it successful? Yes. Maybe then you can add on a few more different things or change the campaign or just keep going with what you're going with. But if you get to the end of 6 months and it's like, we're not getting anywhere, no one's buying, no one's giving us money, call it off. Forget it ever happened. And just know when to cut your losses.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's 2 things that I've noticed just from seeing other people dive into that world with crowdfunding, and we haven't done it for a whole range of reasons. And there's times where we've considered it, but I think we've always made the right decision and decided not to go down that path. But one thing that bands miss out on or don't get the concept of is that there's no story behind it. There's no purpose behind it. Yeah, okay, we're saving money to record an album, or we're saving money to do a video clip, or we're saving money to go on a tour, but there's no purpose or specific story behind it that's connecting people or getting people engaged, that they think, oh, absolutely, I want to support those people because I believe in what they're doing. I believe in the story that's the reasoning behind why they're asking for help. And then the other thing is about, the reward system as well. I mean, you have to be real and really put yourself in the fans' perspective. Would I pay $5,000 for a drum lesson from my drummer? Probably not. So don't put it on there. Don't take the piss.
Yeah.
And, is someone going to pay or pre-order one of my CDs
when they've never even heard it?
Well, when they've never even heard it, or they know that they can get it as soon as it's released anyway for the same price. The merchandise, why would I buy a T-shirt and a CD when I know that I'll be able to get those same things when the album's released? So some of the bands that have done really well, not only have they created a great purpose and a story behind it, or as part of their call to action, like you said before with Facebook, and a campaign, but they've also put things in there that are actually like true incentives, true rewards. They're things that are specific to that campaign that make it unique, that make it exclusive. And if people do decide to pledge, or whatever it might be, the terminology depending on the platform, they're contributing towards something. They feel like they're a part of it, and they're getting something special because they're part of this particular story, not just, hey, we're recording, we need some money, help us out, we'll give you a CD when it's out, thanks, and that's it. So it's really, I don't know. I think not, and this is not just crowdfunding, it's anything. I mean, anything that you do, you need to have purpose behind it. You need to have, as you said before, there's a real plan that you have to put into place, and how you're going to progress with that plan. And I think the clearer that you can make it, the more sense it's going to make from a fan perspective for them to be able to connect and engage with you.
Yeah, and again, like I was saying, the first thing you should think of, if this wasn't my band, if this was someone else's band, would I do these things? Would I pay for it? That's the first question to ask. And don't just be like, oh, yeah, of course I would. Really sit down and think, would I spend my money on this? Offer a really great product. Don't buy the shittiest quality merch. Again, quality versus quantity. Invest in a good brand shirt so that, the shirt's going to last them 5-10 years. I mean, I've got shirts. God, I know people who've had shirts for like 40 years, and the T-shirt, they can still wear it out. Like, invest in quality, invest in a product, invest in something that's sellable and something that people will want, something that's valuable, that's useful. Like things like bottle opener, like those lid openers. Oh, I can't even get the word out. Don't drink. So, like the bottle opener key rings with your band logo on it. Try and think of things that are a bit different. Not everyone wants a trucker hat, and trust me, girls don't always want to buy your band's G-string. But, like, try to be creative with what you're going to give, and but just don't try to be a little too over the top. Again, think what's reasonable. Would you pay for it? Would you want that service?
Yeah,
and that's it's a really honest question you need to ask.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I've seen some really great merch items and some really shit ones as well. Yeah. And I've paid for some really shit ones, and then years later I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah. And I think that asking that question to yourself can be, I think for a lot of bands, is probably a bit of a scary thing to do, because I think it really opens up the reality of whether they're actually putting something together that's quality. And that could really be, it could be quite damaging in a way if you're not prepared for it. Because, I mean, this can even come back to your music as well. If you were listening to yourself, would you like this music? And, would you be satisfied with the end product, the recording, the quality of the recording, or whatever it might be? And I think sometimes bands are in autopilot, and they just want to get something out there, and they just cross their fingers hoping that somebody will like it enough that they'll accept it. And I think the more that we start asking ourselves and saying, is this something that I would want? Is this something that I think is good? Whether that be merchandise, whether it be music, whether it be a video clip, or an engaging post, or whatever it might be, the more that we ask ourselves from that perspective, I think the more success we're going to have, because I don't think we think from that perspective at all.
And look, if it's going to take an extra 6 months of saving up your hard-earned dollars to get that really cool thing to add to your recording process, or if you need to, if you can't afford the video, the videographer person that you really want, but they're going to, you could wait 6 months and save up to pay for them, like, do that. Don't just get something out now because you have to. You don't have to do anything. Like, think of it that way. Like, again, quality, quantity, like really do what's best for you, for your fans, for everyone that's out there. Don't just do it because you think you have to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's such a horrible thing with social media, especially from various aspects. You see, or you like social media, all you see are the positives, all you see are the really good things that are happening to people. Like, you know, you can share those shit stories, or like people will forgive you if you have to, you know, take more time to do something to give them a better product. Because at the end of the day, they're going to want something better than something now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
think.
I know, and you're right. And I think it is hard with social media because, I mean, I see it daily basis. Every time I open up my feed in the morning, somebody I know is playing in front of 20,000 people somewhere in Europe, or
Yeah.
50,000 people. And, you know, there's a few
And you're
guys I
like,
know that,
oh,
yeah. And I just go, oh, and here I am about to go to work. Fuck this. And then
yeah.
suddenly I've got this anxiety going, all right, Ben, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? And
We
then,
need to do something. I've got to put a
yeah,
Facebook post up.
yeah,
Like,
that's
you
right.
know, it
Yeah,
just
I got
hits.
to
And it's
engage.
that social anxiety.
That's it. But the big thing that I've found with this podcast so far, with the musicians that I've spoken to, is that I think people are starting to get now that this is not a race. There is friendly competition, and I think we all want to try and, in some ways, in some aspects, try and outdo each other in little, you know, in friendly competition and whatnot. But I think we all realize that there is really no rush with this, and it's better to hold out for 12 months if it means that you're going to really produce something of great quality than jump the gun and
Yeah, I
shortcut
agree.
something to get something out there quicker, just to ensure that you're being visible and you're being active and whatnot. And to be honest, I mean, you know, you don't have to be recording all the time. You don't have to be putting video clips out all the time to be engaged. You can continue to be engaged via social media and doing online marketing without a new product, without fresh content in that sense, like, you know, music and videos and whatnot. So, I mean, for us, we've had times where we haven't toured for 12 months because of various reasons. We just physically can't do it. But we'll always make sure that we're extremely active on social media, just so that people can see that the band's still there. We still exist. We still function. We're still doing things. And it's a good opportunity to go back retrospectively and repost some old things and get people talking
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
And it's just a way to keep, you know, it's keeping the momentum going, but, you know, not panicking and just desperately trying to find the next thing, and people taking out or remortgaging their houses to try and buy onto some ridiculous tour where they're in debt for the next 10 years. So, so, you know,
Yep,
it's just,
realities.
oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think once, and I've only just realized this in the last couple of years, where I've really calmed down and realized, you know, this is something that, you know, it's, if we're still around in another 5-10 years time, you know, we know what we can achieve, but there's no race to get there. And we know that we've got something that we're confident in. We love what we do. We're confident in the product and the music and whatever it is, that we don't have to sort of just jump at every bandwagon niche thing that pops out all the time, and, you know, the next fad or whatever it might be. We can take our time. We can weigh things up. We can, you know, take calculated risks here and there. But, you know, there's not that stress or that overwhelming desperation to always constantly be in front of everybody else. But anyway, I'll be ranting and raving for ages about this sort of stuff. But I think,
Yeah, we could do like a 6-part series on all of this, I'm sure.
oh, absolutely. Well, what I'll do is, I think with the blog, because it's fairly new, and I think a lot of people are still probably a lot
Yeah,
of
I'm
people
still trying to build up the base, really, just getting the name out there. So still in very, very early phases.
But I think what from our end and from my end, we'll definitely post it around the place and expose a lot more people to it. And I think, as I said right at the start, I think Australia, there, you know, in the global sense, we've got more bands than ever now that are really starting to make a great name for themselves internationally. But there's still a lot that needs to be done back at home locally to get more people engaged. So there's a real positive opportunity for what you're doing to really provide some great services and resources for bands. So I'm going to put links for people to check out and reach out to you and ask you questions, and hopefully you'll get a little bit of business when you're back at home and getting yourself back on your feet.
Pay off some of my debt.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Your adventure.
Yeah, but I think we'll have to do a part 2 sometime down the track, because there's heaps of stuff here, and I didn't even get to, actually, I might ask you really quickly, and this might not be a quick thing, but you mentioned before, and I wasn't aware, with Crash Diet, you actually funded and promoted their tour in 2011 in Australia?
Yes, that was a whole bunch of fun. Probably not a short answer, but
No.
as long as you've got the time, I've got the time. So, yeah, anyway, so it was just started off as being a fan, and I'm a bit of one of those crazy people who drop everything at home and just go follow a band around on an entire tour. I've done that with quite a few bands over the last few years. So 2011 was the Dark Decadence tour. It was Six Iron Eyes, Hardcore Superstar, and Crash Diet. So I'm a huge Six Iron Eyes fan, which is like a awesomely not guilty pleasure of mine, because I don't have to say guilty pleasure with music. I love them to death, but some of their stuff's awful, and I just love it because of that. But yeah, so I pretty much went on tour, followed them around from city to city, and I had a few issues with tickets being, because I knew some of the guys from Six Iron Eyes, and I had a few issues where I'd bought tickets and they'd never got to me. So I, found the guys afterwards, and they helped me out by getting me, a couple of door spots here and there for the tickets that I'd paid for that just disappeared. And then after a few nights, you just bunch of everyone, guys, girls, everyone just goes backstage and just drinks with all the bands, because they're all not super far away from home, but not from home, and you just get chatting. And mate actually became pretty close to some of the guys from Crash Diet, and they were saying how much they'd love to come to Australia. I was saying, yeah, it would be so cool. And it wasn't really a joke, but it was like, yeah, maybe I can do something. And then I got back home, got all their details, got all of their emails, and then I started doing the budgets. So it kind of worked out that I'm a very budget conscious kind of person. I really love doing budgets. It's a bit crazy, but I worked out that if I could do a Sydney and Melbourne show and only get 100 people to each show, I could break even. So I did it in the way that I paid for all of their flights, I paid for all of their accommodation, I paid for everything up front. They received a fee to perform, and obviously they got to keep all their money for merchandise. And yeah, about not even 6 months later, in September that year, they came out to Australia, and it sort of went off without much of a hitch, really. I had 120 people rock up to Sydney and about 140 to Melbourne. So with any extra expenses that came up over, the couple of days with, extra luggage weight and all of that, ended up breaking even at the end of the tour. It was a hell of a lot of fun. They came out for a bit of holiday, so we took them surfing, and we did some other fun things, and got to go around Melbourne, and we just drank and ate. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the guys at it was Alan's Billy Hyde back then, they did like an in-store both in Sydney and Melbourne, and we put on like a free acoustic show, and all the fans got to meet them and sign on, they signed all the autographs and various things. It was just a hell of a lot of fun. So, but yeah, did it out of my savings, 100%. Didn't I borrowed some money, but I was just like as a backup kind of thing. And I just, wanted to do it all on my own, just to kind of say that I could. So I did the tour managing, the budgets, accommodation. I got all of their visas, no sneaking them into a country kind of thing. I went the proper route. Cost me a fortune to do it, but I'm not a big risk taker, especially with money. So I didn't want the whole thing to just fall through last minute. Yeah. So yeah, it was stressful, but it was awesome. And I totally want to do it again at some point.
It's, you might be several steps ahead of me, but I really think that this should be a blog or a series of blog posts just on this story itself. Because I think one thing, especially over the last several years with Australian promoters, or promoters have just popped up out of nowhere. A lot of promoters have left a bad reputation with Australia for a lot of smaller artists that don't use the big touring companies, because, artists getting ripped off and visas not being done properly and all sorts of things. And from what you've just said then, you've ticked every box, you paid for everything up front, you've just committed to it, and you've committed to the whole thing. And obviously it's worked, and, it's a small scale tour, but it was something that came up in conversation casually to begin with, and then became, a goal that you had to achieve, and you put your mind to it and you were able to achieve it. And I think for me, when you mentioned it the other night when we were talking, is that the big takeaway I got from that instantly was, if you can do that, where obviously you've had experience working with bands and being around bands, you understand how things work, but you hadn't, from my understanding, you hadn't done anything like that before. But
no, not at all.
but because you focused on it and you dedicated yourself to fulfilling that goal, you're able to achieve it. And I think if a lot of bands just followed through with half the ideas that they came up with and followed through to the end, even if the idea doesn't seem to be going in the direction that they wanted to, but at least fulfilling it, the state of bands, the state of the scene, state of music, the music industry in general in Australia, at least for metal, would be in a much healthier place. And I think there's probably a heap of takeaways, and I won't chew your ear off now, because I reckon we could be talking for at least another hour just on this tour. But I think the fact that what you mentioned the other night, you were helping take care of merch, the promo, the advertising, you're tour manager, you're doing the visas, the flights, accommodation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even just the logistics of organising that without worrying about the little tiny details here and there is a massive job. And I think the fact that you're able to pull that off and walk away with, I'm all over the place now because I'm getting excited. But the, there's two things. I mean, the fact that you're able to budget ahead and go, what do I need in order for this to financially work? And you had a vision. You said 100 people per show based off all these calculations,
That was
whatever.
the bare minimum.
Yeah.
If only 100 people showed up, the loss was that's how much it was going to cost me to go and see them in Europe. So it would have cost me about $5,000 to get over to see them in Europe and go to a whole nother tour.
Yeah.
So that was my mentality, is if 100 people rocked up, only 100 people, I'd only lose,
Whatever.
it was like $2,500 to $5,000. And that's how much I would have spent to go see them anyway. So for me, I could live with that. So the fact that, around the 130 showed up meant that I didn't have to lose anything in the end of it. But yeah.
But you set those expectations with you up front. So, because I think what a lot
And I told the band that too. I said to them, look,
Yeah.
if I can't afford to do it, if I can't afford to break even, I'm not going to be able to do it. And they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. That's cool. We don't care. Like, if it happens, it's going to be the coolest thing ever. And if it doesn't, we really appreciate that you tried. And that was definitely what I got from them too. So
I think just all that initial planning and setting those expectations, not just for the band but also for yourself, where you're not halfway through the process and you start freaking out, where the unrealistic dream that you may create for yourself is not the reality. Where I think that's where a lot of promoters that have burnt a lot of bands over the last few years, they start off with unrealistic expectations of what they think they're going to be able to pull off. They've aimed way too high.
Yeah, I was so honest with them from up front. I mean, they knew I was just a fan. They knew that, I've worked in the industry. I know a bit about the industry and all of that. So they had confidence in me. And I think the other big thing as well was I wasn't trying to cut any costs anywhere. They didn't drive down to Melbourne stuck in the back of a van. They caught Qantas flights. Like, that's the thing. If I can't provide a quality service, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of, as you were saying before, because of a lot of the promoters, a lot of burnt bridges and stuff, it had just happened. I announced it after some other tour got cancelled. And I think it was just after, I can't remember, there was a metal band that came out and they got stranded somewhere and the whole thing was tragic and I felt so bad. So as a no-name promoter, I was doing it at such a risky time. And I had heaps of people saying, oh, who are you? This isn't going to happen. You're just going to fuck everyone over. I got a lot of that in the first couple of months. And then, as I got closer to the date and, people saw that the band was, really invested in as well. I got them to record all these like promo type videos saying, we're on our way and this, that, and the other. When they got the confidence from the band, they got the confidence from me. So, and again, like I said, they flew on British Airways and Qantas the whole way. I wasn't trying to gyp them out of anything. No one got shoved into the back of vans. No one was getting stranded anywhere. They stayed in reasonably nice budget accommodation. It wasn't the Hilton or anywhere, but it wasn't, some shitty hostel where I'm chucking them in a dormitory, trying to just make sure that they had the best experience so that when in the future, if and when I decide to do another tour, I've got them to say, yeah, she was great. She did a great job. Totally would recommend her.
Absolutely.
And, I've dabbled with other bands trying to, pique their interest to see what they were, what they wanted, but it sort of just fizzled out. And I've got a couple more ideas in my head at the moment. So, kind of who knows where it will go, but I've got something in my brain that if I can, again, sit down, write a strategy, write a budget, get all of that in place. And if then after that, I think, yeah, maybe I can do this, then I'll give it a go. So.
Yeah, and I mean, even if that doesn't eventuate, where the resources or the opportunities aren't quite there at that point in time, I think just the fact that you've been able to achieve this tour on its own with the approach that you took, there's just so many takeaways and things that other people can learn from it. And I think if you haven't thought about it already, this could be a great series of blog posts for you, just to really dissect your approach, and even just such a wanky word, but the philosophy behind your approach, like the way that your expectations, what you expect of other people, and in turn that's what you wanted to ensure, like you said before, provide a quality service. You wanted to ensure that you weren't doing this half-assed. You wanted to make sure that they could walk away at the end of the tour and say, I had a great time, there was no problems, or there's no problems that could have been avoided or anything like that, and they can go back and tell other people of how good of a time they've had. But you've done it the right way, and you've made the calculations beforehand. You've really planned ahead. You set the right expectations, and I think those lessons can be applied not just to anybody else that wants to put on shows, but I think just bands in general with anything that they choose to do. Doing the pre-planning, setting expectations, not half-assing things, taking your time, making sure that if you're going to do something, to make sure it's quality. Pretty much all the things we've been talking about for the last hour and a half. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. And
yeah.
like you said, like, I really desperately wanted to put on more tours, since then, but I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. I can't do it the way I want to do it. So I'm just going to, wait until I can. So again, I really hoped that I was going to bring them out again. And then, they got announced on Soundwave and then all that fell through and then all this other drama. And now they're not even together anymore. But, like, again, it's that I can't do it to the standard that I really want to do it. So I'm not going to just do something half-assed. I really want to wait. Yeah, hopefully this idea in my head and maybe other tours will come up. Or, if there's any investors out there who, want to put on a tour or want to get involved but don't know how to do things, I'm happy to, well, I won't say I'm happy to, but, I'd certainly be willing to chat with people. I loved the process. I loved doing it. Found it a lot of stressful fun. But yeah, I think if you don't really know what you're doing, it's a bit of a hard thing to get into.
Oh, well, I think you're going to be very busy regardless of whatever it's going to be over.
Hope so.
Over the next few months at least. But yeah, I'll definitely be pushing it to a lot of bands. There's a lot of people out there that are just coming into the scene and just starting up new bands and have got a lot of potential. And there's a lot of bands that have been out there for quite a number of years that they probably need a bit of an energy boost and a bit of a fresh set of eyes assisting them and helping them out and giving them a new perspective.
Yeah, I'm definitely available for all of that. So, I think any stage at your career, that's what I'm really trying to be helpful, regardless of whether you're just starting, you've been around for 20 years. I don't care. I don't think that's a bad time to, have a brand overhaul, a refresh, new website. Let's, change everything. Let's start from scratch again. I think it's doable for any band.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'll wrap it up there. It's probably about lunchtime there in the Netherlands.
Good old Netherlands. Yeah, I just can't actually see what the time is from here, but Tummy's not rumbling yet, so that's good.
Oh, cool. Well, look, I'll put links on the show notes so everyone can check them out, and I'll definitely encourage people to make contact with you and pick your brain, and I think it's going to be quite exciting to see what you do because it's something that's, I think, been a big hole for a while there that needs to be filled, and I think you're going to be a huge resource for a lot of bands. So I think it's going to be very exciting. So. Yeah, no, you will. Absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll chat soon. Thanks so much for spending some time.
Thanks for me a call. And yeah, hopefully when I get back to Australia, we'll do something else or chat more or something.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do a part 2 at the very least.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. I'm up for it.
All right. Awesome. All right. Take care.
No worries. You too.
Right, see you later.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. If you are interested in contacting Annelise, I'm going to have all of her details and blog on andysocial.net. So go over there and check it out. If you want to connect with myself, you can contact me via that website or via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Where else am I? I'm everywhere. So there's heaps of resources there to reach out to me, but also to Annelise as well. So there's a lot of great takeaways there. And I think even if you're not in a band, I know Annelise's interest and expertise is obviously in music. But I think for some of you guys that have your own podcast, or I know there's a few people out there that have their own business, hit her up and ask her a few questions if you do have any about, engaging with fans or, with your listeners or with your customers or whatever it might be. Because as we said in the conversation, there are a lot of basic principles to marketing that transcend industry. And I think it doesn't matter what it is that you're promoting, what it is you're pushing, what sort of product, service, whatever it might be, that there are things that work no matter what. And some things work better than others, and they always have to be tweaked to make sense in that particular demographic or that particular niche or product or service or whatever it might be. But there's still those principles that are there. So if you do have questions or you want to do a bit more than what you're already doing, then definitely check out Annelise's blog and reach out to her and have a chat, because I think she'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And of course, she's there to provide services as well with regards to promotion and marketing and all sorts of things like that. So I think especially for bands, there's some great opportunity there to really have somebody with some great strengths in your side of the court and helping you out. Also, I will have a link to the Small Business Big Marketing podcast on the show notes of andysocial.net. If you're not familiar with it already, the host is Tim Reed, who was the marketing manager for Flight Centre in Australia. Now, I could be completely wrong with his position title, but it was something along those lines. But I really, really encourage you guys to check out that podcast. You can find it on iTunes, but I'll put the links in the show notes anyway, only because of the same things I just mentioned before. there's a lot of marketing principles and ideas that come out of that podcast, and that can be applied to what you do. And it's quite exciting. There's really some great ideas and some really cool things. And I think if some bands pay attention to some of the ideas that are coming out of other industries and other businesses, I think that's where the real potential of having something groundbreaking within the music industry. Like, I think there's great opportunity there. So I'll put links in the show notes for you all. Now, if you want to support the podcast, as I said at the start in the intro, if you do shop through Amazon, please do it via my portal on andysocial.net, or you can message me directly and ask for the link. Basically, what happens is if you shop through Amazon already and you use the affiliate link that I have, I get a commission from any orders that are placed through Amazon. What that looks like, how much I get, I have no idea because I only just set it up. But what I hope it will do is earn enough money that it will support the ongoing costs of running this podcast, which isn't a great deal of money, but I think if I can cover those costs, I'll be pretty stoked. So andysocial.net, in the menu bar, there is an Amazon portal link. So click on there and you can just shop as normal. It says it doesn't change your shopping experience apart from the first link that you click on. And but it has a massive impact on me, hopefully. But I will have a number of links scattered throughout the website and on Facebook, which will also include links to books and music and all sorts of products that my previous guests have been involved with as well. So not only will you be supporting the artist or the creator of that product initially via Amazon, but you'll also be supporting this podcast as well, which is really cool. Otherwise, if you don't want to spend any money via online shopping, you can rate and review via iTunes. So that's very simple. You can do that via the podcast app, or you can do it via iTunes on your computer. Also, sharing and commenting on YouTube, that's really cool and a great way to introduce people to podcasts, or even just to my podcast in general. The YouTube links are quite handy in that sense. I know that a number of people have been passing them around, which is really cool. Any way of sharing and commenting and liking on Facebook is great, just to pump the activity. It means a lot. The guys that are doing it's very, very cool. And just get in contact with me via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those places. I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys. Let me know what you think, any ideas for people to have on in the future. I've got a massive list of people, and I'll keep chipping away at that, and there's a lot of exciting things coming up. So love to hear from you. Keep in contact and we'll keep building this together. So until next time, take care. You're ready.